Hello, welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm founder of the Bobby White Foundation, and of course I'm here along with my good friend.
And your co-host.
And my co-host.
Bonnie Snyder.
So, welcome everyone. We're just, when this airs, we'll be a week out from Christmas, so this show is kind of just going to be a free-for-all, which sometimes it is anyways. But this is going to be the last show that we're going to tape until the first of the year. There's just, there's a lot going on in our country with the school shootings and the tornadoes. And there's just so much sadness and grief. And it's, it's hard for people like us, people that have suffered loss, and during December. So we're just going to take a little break, but we're going to sit here and talk with you and see how to maybe help cope and get through it like we have to do too.
Well, and along with that, I mean, even, with this being, considering, everything that has happened over the last few weeks, again, you mentioned, the tornadoes and, that devastation in that area, and for some people, yes, the holidays, is difficult, navigating the holidays in grief. At the same time, there's also, people who kind of use this as a breather and a sit back, and it's like, let me attempt to reset, and, sometimes there is that ability to find some joy in the midst of everything else. And so, it's just going to be a, let's recap the year, kind of thing. Recap the last few months, recap the year, because, I'm still, processing the fact that we've actually been doing this for a year.
I know. I can't believe it, especially as long as it took John to talk into saying yes. But yeah, and we've brought on some really awesome guests throughout the year, and then too we just did a field trip, so we can talk about that a little bit too. So but first we want to of course thank John and WeBeam TV and Rob and Gage and Dylan and for everything that they do.
Awesome crew.
They are. I mean, we were just, wow, not getting too much into it, but we were just out front, just kind of laughing at a situation.
What a situation was, shooting the breeze.
Shooting the breeze. I mean, it's always a good time around here. So, and we want to thank also the Hilton Garden Inn for their sponsorship, and you guys out there. Yeah, be sure if you're in the area to just run into the lobby, and we have artwork hanging up all throughout the main floor of the hotel that is for sale, and they still have the Art for Hope stickers on them. I still need to get them on the website, but even if you go out there and you take a look at them and you see something that you like, just give the gallery a call, and we can figure out what to do. One of the artists, Neil Adamson, is a Florida artist. He's actually a retired firefighter. I've been representing him for, almost 25 years. Alex Groppe, he does some really awesome abstract, real deep, rich color pieces. He was, at one time, I think he was a history teacher at River Ridge High School. But he's kind of switched more into the music part of his art right now. But that's all out there, and because we haven't been able to have our real in-person Art for Hope, we're just kind of extending things a little bit, and just kind of, and I think we're still going to have maybe a couple other pop-up events in the springtime as we work towards our 5th annual next year, which will be in September. I don't have the date yet, but it'll be the week of, see, look at those colorful ones right there.
The ones the ones that were up, I like those.
Those ones right there.
Those are beautiful.
And the richness of the colors in his pieces is just amazing. But now I forgot what I was saying.
Pop-up events?
Pop-up events. we'll have a couple probably in the springtime, and hopefully get something going with Parks and Rec too. So, I mean, we have a lot of plans for the new year. But like you said too, I think the 2 weeks that we're going to be off, of course, I'm trying to get everything ready for Christmas from the gallery. I still got people coming in like last minute. Okay. So I got to get that done. But it's going to, I think, be a little bit of a time to kind of sit back and relax and just not, it's not really going to be relaxed per se in that sense, but, you know, make a little bit of plans for what we're gonna bring, you know, for the new year, both for the show and the foundation. Is I've got some really cool ideas that I've been kind of kicking around. So
Yeah, it's nice to get those, you know, those ideas going. You know, but we talk about, you know, the show and you know, support and whatnot, you know, along with, you know, the hotel. You know, not to forget about our kindness page.
Yep.
And you know, knowing that there are, you know, different amounts that you can send in, you know, to help support the show. You know, just kind of let you know that, you know, this is a, you know, self-supported show. You know, hey, you know, we'd love to have a corporate sponsor, you know, another corporate sponsor, I should say. You know, but you know, those of you, you know, who watch, you know, we have our loyal following. You know, if you want to help sponsor, there's the kindness page. You know, we have the QR code that always pops up, you know, during the show. You know, we have, of course, our fabulous T-shirts.
last minute Christmas gifts, I do have some at the foundation.
You hear that, folks? Last minute Christmas gifts. Everybody, you cannot go wrong with T-shirts.
No, you can't.
You know, you know, for some people, clothing is like, what do you give the person that has everything? A T-shirt.
A T-shirt. And what better than a Hope Bobby White Foundation T-shirt?
Exactly. You know, we have the two styles, the V-neck and the crew, with the two designs, and yeah, they're very comfortable. Yeah, I thought to wear mine, but I figured I'm gonna go a little Christmassy today. Yeah, especially knowing that, you know, we're gonna go on the little hiatus.
I thought about doing Christmassy, but I had to go to I went to another networking luncheon thing, and so I was in foundation mode.
Gotcha.
So thus.
Yeah, I was kind of in what's the word I want to use? Kind of work, not work kind of mode today. It was one of those, you know, needing to decompress, you know, from, hence, you know, the conversation we were having when I walked in this, you know, when I walked into the studio. You know, but some of the, the decompress from last night and work at the same time. So it was like I think I'm going to work for a couple of hours, and then I did a little shop therapy, and then it's like, all right, let me go home and change clothes and, you know, come and film, and then I'm going to do a little more shop therapy. But last night was a little bit of a eventful night, you know, at my house. You know, that, you know, unfortunately involved the two 11-year-olds that I live, you know, that I should say that I live with.
That you live with.
It's two 11-year-olds that live with me, or, you know, no, I think, you know, sometimes I think I live with them and not the other way around. You know, but, you know, given the situation, you know, without, you know, going into a whole lot of detail, you know, it was like, what are we talking about on the show today? And, you know, the event got me thinking about, you know, stressors that happen, you know, along the holidays, not only as they affect maybe us as adults, you know, but also children. And I think specifically, you know, in this case, you know, children who are loss survivors. You know, because unfortunately, you know, I say fortunate for me, you know, being in the job that I have, you know, away from the, you know, not my not show job. You know, I have the access, you know, to resources, you know, when it comes to dealing with, you know, people who aren't in a mental health kind of crises. But, you know, as we were talking about, I know what was going on with, with the boys and everything, it was like, wow, as adults, we, are sometimes in touch with our coping skills. It's not always the same when it comes to children. And, last night, again, there's the two of them, Jabril being one and, Patrick's son Devin being the other. And as I was talking to my coworker who who was talking to both of the boys, this is the first time I saw in a long time that I've actually seen Devin cry. And I'm thinking to myself like, wow, like, oh my goodness, here we're going on for him the second year without his dad. And watching the stages that he's going through and dealing with that loss. And one of the questions we asked him, what do you need? What do you want? And I mean, he answered it one word. Might be actually two if you think about it. My daddy. And I'm sitting back, then, she asked him, she goes, okay, what's the most important thing to you, right now? Like, what's the most important thing you have in your life right now? And I was kind of taken aback, and, I was touched and taken aback, and he says, her? Me, and I'm like, this is why we do this. And I'm like, this is why we do what we do, because it's not just about us, it's about everybody else that we touch, or that is touched by, grief and loss. And I think, it is important to specifically, look at not only us as adults, but, children, children that are left behind.
Oh yeah, and they don't have, their brains haven't matured enough and learned the coping skills that we have. They just, it's just not there. And it's not their fault, it's just their development, and I can't, I couldn't imagine, Devin, 11 years old and growing up, knowing he's growing up without his dad, and that would be like the most influential person in his life.
Well, I mean,
growing up.
True, and in his case, that is true. I mean, if you sit back and consider, with Devin, Pat was a single father,
right?
A single father to Devin, since, almost practically Devin was out, Devin was born. And, though a father to his two younger kids, but those two younger kids have their mother.
Right.
Devin doesn't have his. And, I was talking to one of the schools, about, behaviors and whatnot. And I was like, guys, we really need to focus on, again, what is the cause behind behavior? And I find out, I try to let them know, or educate people. That's what I'm trying to say. Part of the education piece comes, with kids when they are acting out. All too often, some of us, adults, look at it as, oh, this kid is so out of control, or this kid is this, this kid, what's the other expression we used to use growing up? You have no home training.
I never heard of that one.
Oh, well,
That's
okay,
a good one.
It was prevalent when, kind of
Maybe
my era. It was like, you have no home training. Like,
you're only a couple years older than me. Come on.
Okay, well, maybe it's a Jersey thing.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, because I grew up on the West Coast.
Yeah, maybe I'm East Coast.
Yeah. I'm West Coast, yeah.
Yeah, East Coast. Like, maybe it is an East Coast thing. I don't know. Because that used to be the thing. Do you not have home training?
That's a good one. I had to remember that one.
But but again, there's this tendency, that people look at it as, they're not being taught at home. They're just, wayward children. They're just, and I hate to use this word when it comes to children, they're just bad. And it's like, it is, no, maybe these children are processing, what's going on. And again, as I was sharing with, some, folks last night, dealing with, what was going on with the boys, because the coping skills that they chose to utilize last night, were not the healthiest. Was not the healthiest. And, I tell myself, oh, I'm so glad I'm in the field that I'm in, because I probably would have lost my mind. However, I remember saying, it's like, this is their way of dealing with, or they're acting this way because they're dealing with their frustration, they're dealing with their anger, they're dealing with, and when you look at it, what are the stressors that are on these kids? Look at them, 6th grade. This is their first year of middle school, completely different environment. Then you have the they're going from, elementary school where things are so structured to middle school where there's still a little bit of, or, where there's a little more freedom. But at the same time, to, your point of non-developing brains, they're still kind of, they're still juveniles. It's like, guys, what you did, and, and I do this in the classrooms that I'm in sometimes. Guys, you're on a bridge. We're not children anymore in middle school. You guys are, on this bridge to becoming young adults. But on this side of the bridge, it is very different, because they still have that juvenile mentality. And I was like, you hope by the time they
Get to the other
this side of the bridge in 8th grade that, it's like, we're prepping you. 7th grade is, all right, we're kind of weeding that out, or, tamping down the juvenile stuff, that by the time you hit this side of the bridge, you're mature enough to make the transition into high school. But, yeah,
I just thought of the word for us, what I got called, incorrigible.
I've heard that word. I've heard that word.
She was just incorrigible. Okay. Yeah, it's a hard age. It's a hard age for kids, period. But when you add all the other stuff that they're going through, and particularly Devin's, dealing with, it just exacerbates everything. And they don't know how to deal with it properly.
And, I think of, when I think of his siblings, I ask myself, do his siblings even remember their father?
Yeah, because there's no communication, is there?
I wonder if, if Devin were to see his little brother right now, would his brother even know
who he was, yeah.
Anymore, where, they went from, they were, wherever Devin went, his little brother was like, I want Devin, and, they were, very, very close, by the time my, sister was born, Pat and their mom, had, gone their separate ways, shortly after her birth. So there wasn't a lot of, interaction there. She was just a baby,
right.
when maybe 2-ish when Patrick left. So my thing is, does she even know that, she has a big brother? She has an older brother than,
right.
Than the one she has. And again, it's just, Rob, thanks for that picture of Patrick. It's just, it's sad, that, kids are not, some people don't take children's feelings into consideration, because then when I look at it, what happens, when these children become adults and they ask, so where's my dad?
Well, and too, if Devin had that relationship with those other kids, that could be so helpful for him in his healing process and dealing with the loss of their dad. And for the little ones too, especially like you said, as they get older and then they find out the reality. Yeah, kids need to, in these situations, really need to be a part of the whole process, and their feelings need to be really be taken seriously in what they're going through.
I look at, when I'm talking to, people about, when dealing with children, I always say, when you're talking to them, ensure that you are engaging with them, at an age-appropriate
Right,
level.
at their level.
'Cause I find some people like, well, I was telling my child, and, they're talking at a level up here. It's like, well, like, how old is your kid? Oh, he's 2. Like, what? Like,
Well, I know when Bobby passed away, of course, we didn't have kids, but we had have 2 young great nieces, and they just loved Bobby to death. And it was a couple years before we told, before my nephew and his wife told the oldest, and it actually was Haley was participating in our first annual Art for Hope, and she painted the store that we auctioned off. And I told my nephew, I said, if you're bringing Haley, I said, you're going to have to tell her before she comes to this event. And so at the event just prior to it starting, and my nephew is there, and I'm like, where are the girls? And oh, Amy's bringing her down. They're on their way down right now. And I said, have you told Haley? Amy's telling her right now. So they were driving to the event, and I was so worried about Haley. But she is such an awesome little girl, and she's a teenager now. I just remember seeing her as she got to the event, and she just ran to me and just gave me this great big hug. And they seemed to think that she probably had already figured it out. She did end up, I don't know if it was that year or the year after, there was some talk between some girls at their school. And Haley went and got help. Nobody else did or said anything that was in the same situation, and there were several at the time. Haley was the only one who kind of, I guess, instinctively maybe knew because of what our family went through. Because in the very beginning, they just were told that Bobby was sick and he went to heaven. And but it's kind of, you gotta do it age appropriate and know when is going to be the right time. Or I thought I turned this off. It's a new phone.
so things that happen on the set, folks.
I know I turned this off.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. Well, at least it is off. Why is it ringing? It's new, so I don't know how to work it.
It was nice. I was like, oh, I like, the camera set. Okay, squirrel standing out.
Oh, geez.
But speaking of events, we've been kind of busy.
Yes,
And
even Offset.
Even Offset, we went on a little road trip or a field trip.
We went on a field trip last week.
Last week, and an amazing field trip it was.
I was so blown away at what this organization is doing in our community. It's amazing. We went to the Vincent House. And a dear friend of ours, Elizabeth, what is she, like the director, or I don't know what?
I think that's what it's
something. Yeah. Anyways, she invited us up, and actually I invited them to come on the show, but I thought, well, maybe we need to go on a field trip and let's go check this place out. So we went up there last week, and it is an amazing facility. They have one down in St. Pete, one in Hernando County, and we have our new one here in Pasco County. And how would you describe it?
The way they described it is a club of sorts.
Right.
What I liked about how they described it is you can't tell who was the staff and who are the club
Members,
yeah,
right.
The members. But it is specifically designed, for people who are recovering or dealing with a mental illness, as their mission statement says there. And it's basically, kind of a way to make, help them become I'm always cautious, when I frame this like this, successful functioning members of the community. Because unfortunately what happens, with, individuals who are dealing with mental illness, you have the, issue of, well, I have this mental illness, how is this going to affect me? Or I have this mental illness and I'm aware of how it's affecting me. But then you have, the stigma that comes along with, I have this mental illness. How are other people in the community going to view me? How is this mental illness going to impact, my quality of life, my ability to get a job, my ability to live independently, and we can go down the list. And for me, what I really enjoyed about, our, we'll call it our field trip, is, I was like, oh, I think where was I? Who was it? I think Greg was up. I was like, oh, I gotta go do this thing for work. I'll be back in about an hour. And this tour of the facility was like 2 hours long. But the thing about it, the thing with the 2 hours, and I'm not complaining at all about the 2 hours. It didn't seem like
Oh no, not at all.
that long. I got in the car and I was like, oh my goodness.
I know, I couldn't believe how long we were there
It's like
either.
2 hours. But, what I liked about it is, you walk in, like the openness of the building, and I don't want to steal too much of their thunder because they
Yeah, we got to save some of it for when
they are coming in as guests, and well,
and one of the members is gonna come in as a guest too, so that's gonna be really cool.
So yes, I don't want to steal too much of the thunder and talk about what we saw in the facility. All I know is, our field trip was 2 hours long and well worth the, I think we could have stayed another 2 hours.
Oh yeah, especially when the founders came out and spoke with us.
Yeah.
And, they started this, much for the same reason that we do what we do.
And I would say, let's save that.
Okay, so we can't even say that. So, but it was, it was an amazing field trip, and it's seeing it, doing what we do with the show and the foundation, and finding these other little gems in our community that are here to help everybody. And like we said when we were talking while we were there, and we've said this to other organizations that we've had on the show and that we're in touch with, it takes a community. It takes all of our organizations in order for us to make a healthy community and to help those that are struggling, but they can get the help, and they can know that they're not alone in whatever journey that they're taking. So,
And I like that they're, okay, so guys, we just sat back and dropped a couple of tidbits for you.
and now you got to wait until next year.
I want to hear what they said. Yeah, you have 2 weeks to, what's the phrase my children use a lot? You have two weeks to marinate on,
Right. Well, and that's just kind of like the beginning of, guests that we'll be bringing onto the show, beginning in the new year and throughout this coming year, introducing, other organizations. There was an organization I mentioned a couple times that I was hoping to get on today, but, this time of year is just so crazy for everybody. So I'm hoping to get them on because I think they have an event in January or February that we want people to be aware of. So, I'm excited about that. I can't really wait to get Elizabeth on here with one of the members from the Vincent House and this other organization and finding, other community partners. We're going to get the girls back from Parks and Rec too. They're a lot of fun and it's just so amazing how they, like what we do is out of a tragedy, you just take the bull by the horns and try and do better and make better for the community and those girls have really done that within Pasco Parks and Rec and for the community. So hopefully like I said, we have a huge county. Our county is big, and it's kind of split in half. So sometimes it's hard to share a lot of resources and events, throughout. It's usually, West Pasco and East Pasco, but they're really on board with, we did the event in East Pasco, and so now we want to do something in West Pasco, and so that's gonna be a lot of fun. I ran into a gal from Parks and Rec at one of the events recently, and she goes, "Oh, they already know you," and I was like, "Yeah, they do," because she was collecting information from, I guess, other vendors at the event that we were at. And she said, "Oh, I recognize you. Okay, we'll be in touch." Yeah.
And I think it's worth noting to the folks that tune in and watch the show, like if you yourself or there's a community partner that you feel would be, I don't want to say a good fit, but would be somebody that we should bring on with us. Reach out to the foundation and say, hey, get this person. That would be, a good fit for, the show, or, you guys should consider,
Well, and even, something for, the foundation. I had mentioned, at the beginning that I'm kind of working on towards a new project program for the foundation in which it'll bring in more community partners, and that I haven't come up with a name of it yet, but the idea of it is self-care wellness kind of scholarship program, and the basics of it would be we'd have I call them community partners, but like a massage therapist or a couple massage therapists, chiropractors, maybe, of course, I always think of Kim from 9 Round, someplace to exercise, hair and nails, where people that are going through, being a loss survivor, particularly maybe in the first 6 months or even year, we have a hard time taking care of ourselves. And this would just be a way to help them. That maybe somebody really just needs to go get a good haircut and get their nails done, just to relax and just to take care of themselves. Where either they can nominate themselves for a scholarship where the foundation would pay for that service, or have, somebody who knows them or, whatever, where they can nominate that person to say, hey, she's going through this, a really good massage would probably do her really good, so I'm kind of working on putting something like that together for the...
Yeah, that sounds really exciting because, again, as we're talking about, when we're going through stuff, regardless, and I would say, almost say regardless to what it was, but any, traumatic event, whether it is dealing with a loss, or, sometimes, in our daily, our own, a work stressor, a, relationship stressor or whatnot, when you think about what we're doing here, even though the, I would say the umbrella is, grief and loss, and loss survivors. Underneath that umbrella is, is so, is some other stuff as well, because, if you sit back and think about it, all right, we've suffered, these losses. What's after that? It's not like the person, or persons that we lost, we lose them over and over every day. There are times that, depending on what they are, we deal with the residual effects over and over every day. And so I think it's important, to, promote self-care. And I mean, I get it, a lot. Like I was talking to my supervisor this morning. I kind of texted her late last night after, all the events at my house. And I was like, holy cow, this is what happened. I was going to let you know, I'm really going to be remote tomorrow. It's usually I go in the office at Tuesday. I'm not, And, she's very, my supervisor is very, very good, about, are you sure you want to work today? You might want to consider, taking some time. Like, what are you doing for, for self-care?
Right.
And, it's important, and her doing that, is a reminder that sometimes we have to be the reminders for others, to talk about, or to remind, hey, do some self-care. So whereas, say, my supervisor would say to me, what are you doing for self-care? As I text her back, well, this is what I'm telling, like, there was a joke, as I'm telling her what's going on, and like the very last line of this text message I put to her, and it's like, and I didn't drink, LOL. And she was like, well, I'm glad to hear that, and I was like, no, I said, that was me being sarcastic, it's like,
right.
I wasn't drinking. But I said, that was my, attempt at, she's like, oh, okay. Not that, mind you, not that there was a concern, that I was going to go on this bender. But, it's, in that, again, it's that reminder to, do some, some self-care, whatever it is. Like for me, it's shop therapy. Like, for the first time in decades, today, I'm going to say it's probably today, because I leave, when we leave the studio, I'm probably going to have all of my Christmas shopping done.
Oh, jeez.
Which is like, what? I'm more likely going to have all of my Christmas shopping done. And, now there's, what's the word I'm looking for? I have an incentive to get it all done. I'm leaving on the 21st. I'm not coming back until Christmas Eve.
Well, that's another reason why we're not going to be here next week, too.
Yes.
Because you decided to go away.
Yeah, co-host, I have co-host of yours. She has this tendency to leave my cruises and vacations and whatnot. But,
Oh, well. Well, it's good timing, though, because, yeah, we were actually, because what did I text you, like Friday night or something? What are we going to do? Are we going to tape, over the holidays? And oh, no, it was Saturday night, because you were out to dinner with your kids. And you're like, oh, let me think about it. Let me think about it. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk about it Tuesday.
We'll talk about it on Tuesday.
And then between then and now, and then you said, well, I'm not going to be here next week. And I was like, it's okay. I think I've already decided that we're going to take the 2 weeks off.
And that's the Christmas week, that is, like next
Yeah, that
week
is the week of Christmas week. You're right. And so, I mean, it'll work out good. Because I was actually, when I was just watching what was going on out there in the world, and I was just, we need to take a break. I need a break. I'm sure you need a break, especially after last night. And, and just to, think about all these other people that are, towns that are totally devastated, and these families that lost so many people, recently. It's just, and it's devastating any time of year, but I think it just, it adds to the devastation when it's this time of year.
It is, and when I heard, that these tornadoes, tore through like Kentucky and, Missouri and,
Well, and you have family out there too.
I do. I think for me, when I heard that Kentucky was hit, one of the first things that hit in my mind, that came into my mind is, did it hit Katie's?
Oh, is that the town the people that helped you?
Yeah, the people that helped us. And I was like, how close was this to Katie's? And the thing that came into my mind was, that town with those people who are no longer strangers. We are like friends. It's like we've become life friends now. And I remember posting on my social media page, please pray for everybody in the wake of this tornado. And by the way, my friends and family that are in its path, please do a check.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I think one of the first people to chime in, and say that they were okay, was Sue, she was like, no, we're okay here. And then, her daughter, Brandy, she chimed in and said, yeah, they are, and I'm probably going to get northeast, south, and west, but they were like, a couple of counties west of where it hit, so they were spared. My sister, one of my older sisters, called me. I can't get a hold of her mother. My mom's in the Mississippi area. She's not answering. I'm like, well, hang on a minute. So, I called my other, my younger sister, excuse me, that lives in Mississippi. Hey, were you guys in the wake of this, and her response was kind of like, what tornado? Or something like that. But she's like, if it hit any part of Mississippi, she goes, it's not, we didn't know about it. She says, it was nowhere near us, so that was comforting. But watching, looking at the news and, hearing, about the one town that was like 70% of this town is gone.
Oh, I know.
Again, this, started looking at it last night or listening to it last night, and then, of course, a follow-up with it this morning about the woman who, is herself and two children. And she said, she had her children like tucked under each arm. One I think was 2 and the other one was 4. And miraculously how they survived. And she goes, in a microsecond, we were in this room in our house on the bed to being 200 feet over here because the tornado just sucked them up, took the roof off the house, pulled them and the mattress they were on, like basically up out of bed, and they like flew through the air and landed 200 feet away from their home. And I think she said she had a broken arm, but she goes, luckily there were no broken bones to the children.
Amazing.
And again, I was like, you think of the things like the people, like, well, the children remember that, it was kind of the first thing. But she was like, I'm grateful. I don't know how we survived that. I still don't know how. And I'm thinking, she's very calm. And in my head, I'm like, I wonder when the realization of what she went through is going to hit.
Gonna hit, yeah.
And, again, this is, one of those things where, we see it in our line of work all the time. Oh, I'm good. Until you're not. And then when
Well, and that's what, when you're in the midst of all that, they're so focused right now on their survival, cleanup, where's food and shelter, where's all that coming from, and even the people that are volunteering to go in there to help them out. So you're focused, and that's what happens with us. It's when all this goes away, everybody goes back home, and the reality of what you just went through sets in.
Yeah, I know it was funny, if I get a reality reminder in my house all the time, of course it does, but with
I don't know why this does this.
The ghosts in my house, my children are like, our house is haunted. Patrick, stop. The boys alone. But yeah, what I mean, for me, I use that as a comical coping, I guess. It's like, it's like not wanting to minimize, or make light of, the loss, while at the same time, demonstrating that you can function after a loss. You cannot allow yourself to be consumed by the grief. Like, you can allow yourself to grieve at the same time not being so consumed by it. And that's not to say that there aren't those times that I have that wind gets knocked out of my sails kind of moment, and I find myself like, oh, all right, I need a second, but at the same time, I'm also able to, okay, reel it back in, recenter, reground, you got this, and, sometimes think, what would he say if he were here? I remember, things that he used to say, to other people, when, they suffered losses, and some of the comments, on its surface may seem, a little inappropriate. Again, like I remember, when we were going to Kansas for Aiden, and, Carl, it was like his first question to me when he called, "Where's my little brother?" And, I looked at Pat. He, it's like, he wanted you, And I was like, the first question, like once, we processed, the fact that Aiden was gone, his next question was, "Where's my little brother?" And the boys were tight, and of course I'm sitting back thinking, what is Patrick going to come out? What is Patrick going to say to his brother? And the comment that he made, I'm looking at him, did you just say that? But then I had to sit back and think about it. I asked Carl, I said, did you hear what he said to you? And he goes, but that's my little brother, and that's why I needed to talk to him. And, and so it's like taking, when you're able to interject laughter and comedy and whatnot into a tragedy, it doesn't, like some people think, oh, it cheapens,
No.
it cheapens the loss. It is a, what's the word I want to use? It's disrespectful to the memory of the person. And it's like, no.
No.
I just...
No, and our loved ones, they would want us to laugh. They don't want us to be sad all the time. I know that my husband doesn't want me to be sad all the time. Now, he can't control that right now, but no, you want to be able to talk about them and have, talk about the good times and the funny things and, the quirky things, about them. Because I was reading something, and I've often said this, when my mom, right after Bobby died, my mom wanted me to sell my property and move back to Washington. And I was like, and my response was, and it this goes along the same lines, is we had 25 wonderful years here. I cannot let one bad incident ruin all that. And it's the same thing with your memories of that person, you know, aside from, you know, that. You want to remember how they lived, not how they died.
Well, I mean,
Or, you know.
no, that is so true. You know, when I think about, you know, like someone asked me, my neighbor, you know, again, I talk about him a lot. He's my best friend, you know, as well. You know, we have this joke about, you know, eventually we're going to sell our respective houses and, you know, buy a place out in the country, you know, like we always say, we're going to buy a commune. I was like, stop it. You know, I was like, what do you mean a commune? But no, there's like a group of us that, you know, are friends together. It's like, yeah, let's just, you know, you live over here, and you live over here, and you live over here, and you live over here. How about if we all just sell our respective, you know, houses and just buy a little community where, you know, we're all within walking distance of one another? And I'm like, you know, in theory, that sounds really good. At the same time, for me, it's like, this is the last place that Patrick lived. You know, like, you know, his bedroom is still made up, you know, and it's funny how when people come to my house, no one sleeps in that room. You know, and it's like, yeah, guys, you know. And in the beginning, I want to say people avoided sleeping in his room because, you know, I would have that moment of, oh, that's his room.
Right.
There. You know, now it's like, I will always refer to it as that's Pat's room. But I'm not as skittish, I should say, about people sleeping in it. So, but I think it's important, you know, I actually continue with the importance of, you know, this particular show and going into hiatus, you know, that we do remind people, you know, it is the holiday season. You know, there is that potential that you're going to feel, you know, get down in the doldrums, you know, don't isolate, don't, you know, or I should say don't. Don't. Try not, you know, try to avoid, you know, isolating, you know, use, you know, these, you know, self-help, you know, tips that we give you, you know, make sure that you're eating, you know, the exercise, you know, even if it's just going for, you know, a little walk somewhere, you know, I know I have a few people on speed dial that if I'm, you know, in the doldrums, I know I have my go-to people that I can call and say, Tammy, I'm having a moment, or I can walk across the lawn, you know, Craigers, I need, you know, I need you, you know, and vice versa, you know, but don't isolate.
And if you know somebody that you may see that is feeling that way, or you just know their situation, reach out to them. You know, I was telling my mom, and it was kind of cool. In the last like 4 or 5 days, I've gotten phone calls from friends that I haven't spoken to, or some haven't even seen since COVID, and just a phone call out of the blue. And I was thinking about you, you know, I just wanted to call and you know, chat for a little while. And one of the gals called me Saturday night. I was at the Lynn's birthday party and forgot to call her back. And then I got this call from another friend. So I texted her last night. I said, I'm sorry, I did get your call. So tonight I'm going to call her. Because he just, you know, just out of the blue, just, you know, hey, you know, I haven't talked to you for a while. I just wanted to call and give you a chat. I mean, it you know, I go through ups and downs during this time of year, probably more so than most times. But just knowing that this is the first Christmas we moved up here. There's that Urgel tree farm, and Bobby went and cut down our first Christmas tree here He thought he was all mountain man with his little suspenders and stuff. But I can't say how awesome that made me feel that these people just called up just to say, hey, I haven't seen you, I haven't talked to you in a while. I just want to call and check in and see how you're doing. And because you never know what that person is feeling at that time. You may be having one of those down moments, and then you see, oh wow, this is really cool, so that.
Yeah, those 3 words, are you okay?
Are you okay?
And then along with that, remembering, that, there are the crisis lines that you can call. And again, as we always say, please, put these in your phone. You may never need to, hopefully you'll never have to use them, but it's nice having them, at your fingertips in case you do. Also, hey, the purple folders, they were created for a reason. Let's hope that we don't have to send any out, but at the same time, they're there.
They're there, and they're there for a reason too. We don't want people to think that they're going through this by themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he said we're gonna be off for the next couple weeks, but there's 48 shows you can watch in those 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just do the best you can. Don't expect too much out of yourself if you don't want to.
Exactly.
And
happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, however you celebrate.
Whatever you celebrate.
Happy New Year, and remember,
there's always hope, and we'll see you next year.